good, YouTube? My name is Harris, and you're watching another episode of BRG MX5. In this episode, we are not modding, we're not putting something new, we're actually trying to fix something. The past couple days, when I start the car, there's a very high-pitched squealing noise coming from the engine bay. I believe it's the accessory belt. It also happens between 1,800 to 2,200 RPM. Now the reason why I say it's an accessory belt is because with the car not in gear, I accelerate past that point and makes the noise. When it's in gear, it still makes that noise. So I can rule out the transmission, I can rule out the diff. Upon startup, so it's not cold, it's not hot or cold dependent. It happens regardless of temperature. What else? And it's coming from the front of the engine, not the back. You know, it's these kind of small things that you can do yourself to find out what the problem is, just by doing some simple process of elimination tests. So I'm gonna bring the car into the garage, and I don't know if you can hear it outside, but it's a pretty crappy day today. Well, come join me and let's see if we can fix this problem. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start the engine and let it warm up. One of the times it starts to squeal is when it's cold, and well, when it does that, I'm going to have a look at the power steering / AC belt to make sure. Hopefully that is the one that is the culprit. And that didn't really go as planned. I expected to hear a noise upon startup, but it didn't make any noise whatsoever. Tried to rev it a bit to hit that 2,000 RPM mark, but no noise. So I'm gonna go ahead anyways and check the tightness of the accessory belt. Hopefully that will help. Not too sure. All I can do is really check. One thing I forgot to mention is that when I have the car running with AC on, it makes the noise, it extends the range at which the noise comes on. That's because the AC compressor, which is there where my finger's pointing, is on the same belt as the power steering, which is that belt that you can see over there. So I believe it's that belt that's causing my noise, and yeah, so that's another thing you can diagnose yourself. Just try different bits, see where it happens, and then narrow down the culprits one by one. Just a pro tip, I've labeled all my 12mm and 10mm in yellow and red respectively. That's so that it's easy to find out where it is in my toolbox. Similar to my socket set as well, they're all red and yellow. So if I want a 10mm, I'll just grab the red. Yellow for a 12mm. My other camera died, but anyway, I've took off the air intake with the filter. Now, to loosen it, there's a 14mm bolt inside the pulley here. You need to unlock that, you need to loosen this guy, and then this guy is the bolt that tightens or loosens it. As hopefully you can tell, but that bolt is kinda on the piss, a bit bent here, so I think that may be the reason why it's making squeals, or loosening and tightening as it's spinning. So I might try and adjust that and put a little bit
more tension, because it looks like there's a lot more slack than it's supposed to be. Here's another pro tip. If you can't get enough leverage with the bar or socket or wrench or whatever you're trying to undo a nut or bolt with, you can use a hole in a spanner or even a crescent and put it in between it like this, if I can do it with one hand, like that, and use that as an extension. That way you can get a bit more leverage, and there you go. Okay kids, I was kinda wrong, but that's okay. It's okay to be wrong. So that's a 14 down in here. That's a 14 which you need to loosen. These two are 12s, and that was a 12 as well. Now, this is not recommended. This is a countersunk bolt in what is a flat surface, so I'm gonna replace that when I can. I just don't have a bolt with me that's long enough and it's flat. Okay, so the order of what you need to do is loosen this guy here, loosen this guy, loosen these two guys, and then you can undo that. How it works is that this bolt pivots this arm, these two bolts pivot this block here, and then this guy tightens the whole thing up. So it rotates like that. It pivots off this one, pivots off this bolt here. So when you loosen everything, it can free to move up and down. And the tightening process is the opposite way. So you start from here, work your way around. So I've tightened this, I've tightened these guys, I've tightened this. Now I've got to tighten the pivot. And it's a lot stiffer, and the spec for it is 10 kilos at the longest point between the two pulleys. So it's not these two, it's between the power steering pulley and the main pulley on the engine. And it's 10 kilos, so imagine if your finger is pushing with 10 kilograms worth of force up and down, and it should only move by about 10 to 13 mils of deflection. So this one feels a lot tighter than what I previously had it in. Alright, everything's back to where it is. All the 4 bolts are tightened down, the air intake is back on again, and the temperature sensor is plugged in. So let's see if it makes a noise on startup. It didn't do it earlier today, so I don't expect it to be noisy. But what I'm going to do is, at least I know what the problem may be. So if this does happen again, I'll keep my tools in the car, just in case if anything happens. But hopefully it doesn't. But let's just start her up and see if anything's changed. So it looks pretty good. I'm going to take it out for a quick spin and see if that changes anything. I just came back from the test drive and the noise is still there. I decided to loosen the belt as well, and the noise was still there. So I think it could be the alternator belt now, because I do see a little bit of a wobble when the belt's running. So what I'm going to do is try and trying to tighten or loosen the alternator belt to see if that changes anything. My first initial hunch was wrong, because yep, I tried both tightening and loosening the power steering and AC belt. Still, it's making the noise. And we're back. The car is running with no more squeals around the 2000 range. In fact, there's no more squeals. It doesn't matter what revolutions is at, because I fixed the problem. The problem was not the power steering and AC belt. It was actually the alternator belt. That little wobble, that tiny little wobble that I saw, was enough to make it squeal at 2000 RPM. So what I did was I removed the intake. I removed the one on the right hand side with the air filter. I also removed the left bit that goes into the throttle body, and there are two bolts that you need to loosen. There's a 14mm bolt below the alternator, which the alternator pivots back and forth. You need to loosen that. Then there's one on top which locks the adjustment block. So the bottom 14mm, the top 12mm, and then you got the adjustment bolt, which is that long one which you tighten to go tighter or looser. So I made that tighter, screwed it all in, put the intake back on, and ta-da! So what I'll probably end up doing is replacing that belt, because as I was just fiddling around with my belt, some black pieces came off. So yeah, I know it's a problem. So belts are pretty cheap. They're around $20 here in New Zealand. So gonna replace that and the power steering belt anyway, so might as well do that all in one go.